Let's just go to the defense minister. I'm sure people have seen this or heard this, basically calling Palestinians animals and vowing mass retribution here.
We are imposing a complete siege on Gaza. There will be no electricity, no food, no water, no fuel. Everything will be closed. We are fighting against human animals and we are acting accordingly.
So, and that's exactly what they have done. So we're talking no electricity for more than a few hours a day. You are also talking about the cutting off of water supply. There's already, I believe, like 97% of Gazans don't even have access to clean water. Again, 2 million people in the most populous place on earth. 50% of the 2 million are children. That's why there are so many images of children who have been killed coming out. This is just today, and mind you, Gazans are being told to leave. Problem is, no way out. And today there was actually, Israel made sure there was no way out by bombing the only crossing between Gaza and Egypt. Okay, so I can't watch even that video and not get emotional because I can't hear the people screaming in the background. And I think, you know, it's just incredible to me that people who say if you mention occupation, you believe in terrorism. It's like, it's precisely because I cannot stomach a single person dying needlessly from this occupation on any side that I say what I say. But anyway, so there you have it. They are truly trapped. They were there with their suitcases trying to leave. Again, Gaza is already a place of refugees. 70% of Gazans are refugees from Israel. They were cut off from their land, their ancestral land, and pushed into Gaza. Again, this open air prison. Here's a little bit of context, and I apologize. There is more video. If you don't want to watch it, you don't have to. But here is Mohammed al-Kurd, who, again, became sort of well known for the attacks on communities in East Jerusalem that happened last year and the year before, I believe. And things that we don't talk about, things that I haven't seen celebrities post about. You know, the children dragged out of their homes in East Jerusalem. Didn't see that. But that's fun. Anyway, here he is. And I think this was an incredible little video, if I can pull it up properly.
Oof. I mean, I want to invite you and I want to invite the listener to consider, you know, the level of despair people in the Gaza Strip must be feeling. In the past 17 years, Palestinians in the Gaza Strip have been living under blockade, under siege. Nearly a quarter of our population in the Gaza Strip, which is besieged, do not make it past 5 years old. Could you imagine that? We don't have access to clean water. People in the Gaza Strips die of suicide and the routine bombardment that happens every single time. And when they want to protest, like protesting peacefully in the Great March of Return, they get shot in the limbs, they get shot and killed. You have a population of amputees roaming around the Gaza Strip. When they want to ask people to boycott, you have governments like the United States government and the United Kingdom government criminalizing that boycott.
So that's what you, in reference to what Ora was saying earlier, this nonviolent protest also being criminalized. Just, you cannot even boycott Israel.
When they want to write about this, they are accused of bigotry and they are accused of hate speech. How much violence is acceptable? And we are told that we have to accept that there's a foot on our neck, and there's a foot that continues to be on our neck for the past 75 years. And in Gaza, it's 17 years of absolute siege. And any type of protest we do is completely unacceptable. Not only this, but our massacres, the bloodshed of our people is normalized, it's business as usual, it's day-to-day, and not only it's financed and supported by Western regimes. These are people with no prospects. These are people that live under the daily threat of death, who get bombarded every other day. There is one population that lives under a system which has been deemed by many, many global human rights organizations as a system of apartheid. There's a population that lives inside a cage without citizenship, without right to movement, without access to clean water, and there's a population that enjoys its full rights. this year and last year have been the deadliest for Palestinians in the occupied West Bank since anybody started keeping track of Palestinians being killed by the occupations. But none of those things warrant a special program. Can you tell me why is that?
So he's asking there the reporter that they're doing a special program on what's going on now, but why are all these moments didn't get their own special program? Just, yes, one of the big things was 2018. There was a great march of return in Gaza. Israel killed 217 protesters and injured 36,000 of them. This is the nonviolent resistance that has happened before. Again, not to justify, to just lay the context down. But Ora, you have done so much Palestine solidarity work, and Ray, please jump in wherever. But I do want to ask you about being, and you mentioned this earlier, but being steadfast in this solidarity and how we can maintain that, even in the face of the atrocities committed by Hamas, and how, how you almost like decenter yourself from this, and especially as an American Jew, I think, and we didn't talk about the anti-Semitism piece, but yeah, tell us about, like, you've really also had to talk to a lot of people that have struggled to come to a place of supporting the rights of Palestinians, right? And like, anyway, I don't know, just weigh in here, please. There's no question. I'm terrible at this.
Well, I mean, what I would say is my first response is nobody is made safer by condemning anti-Semitism. That literally does nothing. It has no impact on anybody's safety. Not a single person's safety is helped by the ADLs coming for everybody, or your liberal Zionist friends telling you need to condemn anti-Semitism as a response.
Or it's that I support the murder of babies.
Yeah, but like that call to say like that we need to condemn anti-Semitism is not going to free those hostages. It's not going to dismantle Hamas. It's not going to bring peace. And throughout history, what has always proven to bring peace is solidarity and working together to make safe, dignified, healthy lives for people. And diversity and equity and democracy is what has always made people safer. Mm-hmm. And so throughout the, that I have been exhausted by trying to create, to be a part of liberating Jewish culture from the stranglehold of the narrow nationalism of Zionism, and the really fascist behaviors of Israel's supporters. And I think that to some extent, we are all going to have to just focus on the many liberation struggles throughout the world. There are more of us than them. Like most of the oppressor in any society is going to come last kicking and screaming. But of course, there is a small but mighty Jewish anti-Zionist movement. I do think it's, we are growing. Mm-hmm. But I do think it's important to critique my people for how small this movement still is. But we've been, from childhood, we've been brainwashed. It's like a cult mentality. We are trained to have emotional responses to political issues. Mm-hmm. We are trained to be defensive and reactionary instead of rational, like thinking about what are the historical origins, what are the conditions, that can be addressed if we are actually interested in peace, right? In safety, even if it's from a more self-centered point of view.
Sure.
But so for me, joining the struggle for Palestinian self-determination and freedom and dignity was the only way I could get my humanity back. So when I'm thinking about this, I was thinking about, and you and I was sharing some of my writing with you, and it made me think of the infamous Malcolm X comment that the chickens will come home to roost, referring to, about in response to the assassination of JFK, but it was a bigger comment on white supremacist, settler colonial societies. And I looked up the origin of this, the kind of chickens coming home to roost comment. Mm-hmm. And it's actually from like the 1800s, from this writing talking about how curses are like chickens. They always come home to roost. And it made me think of how the Israeli occupation is a curse. And it is, as we know, that a militarized society is poisoning itself, is becoming monsters. And almost every Israeli serves in the army. And those who refuse to serve are punished. So that's also something we all have to remember here, is that like these are not Israelis who don't have any idea about some war being on Palestinians being carried out like miles away by somebody else.
That's what I think was so powerful and important to remember, is there's a dissonance, right? Where obviously you see the level and the scale of death, that Hamas waged on Israeli citizens, and you think this is awful and terrible, but also, especially a rave, a music festival where everything's fine, right? Shouldn't that be? But it is happening. It's right next to Gaza. It's right next to people being deprived of their liberty. And that dissonance is rife throughout the occupied territories and throughout Israel generally. But then you bring up an important reminder, which is, Israelis cannot necessarily pretend that they are ignorant to that, because every day, if they serve in the military, and as they're required to, they carry out these exercises of raiding people's homes, of terrorizing them, of shooting randomly into buildings, as they have openly admitted that they do, just to get their rocks off because they didn't know what else to do, of strip searching people through checkpoints when they're trying to get to doctor's appointments. I mean, you name it, the level of daily dehumanization that has happened, that they participate in, that yes, their government obligates them to. And there are resistors, as you mentioned. But again, we're sort of thrust in this narrative of like, where did this come from? I mean, even less sort of head scratching than 9/11. You know what I mean? Like, even more obvious than that. Anyway, Ray, do you want to weigh in here? I realize. Yeah.
Yeah. So I am just shocked. I mean, I'm not surprised considering the level of pro-Israel propaganda that is allowed to spread through media, unquestioned. And yet again, as both of you have mentioned throughout this, if you do question it, you're supporting terrorism then. Or it's anti-Semitic. You're not allowed to question it. You're not allowed to call it propaganda. But speaking of the rave, uncritically put out across so many otherwise reputable media sources that it was a rave for peace, which is not founded in anything that I've been able to find about the event. Also, the idea, if it was for peace, how many Palestinians were there? How many people from Gaza were there? Zero. They are dancing to EDM music while in the distance they can see just some of the worst human suffering on the planet. That is not a celebration of peace. And, I also just, invoking 9/11, I do want to mention, I've seen reports that a lot of cities have bolstered security around, in Jewish communities, around synagogues. And if there are credible threats, and generally, it's a group in the United States that has been targeted, particularly with white supremacist violence and hate crimes, I'm happy to see that. I want to see the same thing at my mosque. I want to see the same thing in the community I live in, which is majority Muslim community here in Chicago. You have massive Palestinian population here. I want to see increased security there, because the rhetoric that's being spread online, in person, I've already seen videos of people breaking windows of businesses that have Palestinian flags, screaming at people who they just perceive to be Muslim. Right? I want to see security for these people. The media is referring to Palestinians as all terrorists and animals, less than human. is how, honestly, worse than animals, they're saying they deserve to be treated. I mean, I saw people that I otherwise would respect, I've seen describe the deaths of Palestinians as justified and incidental to war,
Yeah.
which
and yeah, and I think even worse, just kind of like sort of very like using them the way that like the in like in the form of pawns, like treating them like pawns, basically treating Palestinian lives as if they're expendable, as if it's all being done for geopolitical purposes. Oh, it's Iran. Oh, but it's Israel. Or but it's, you know, and it's ultimately, and then Saudi Arabia, and then a few other you know, thousands of Palestinians die, and that only helps, you know, like the Islamic State of Iran. And it's just like, wait, you just reduced, like you just skipped over the part where like thousands of Palestinians die so you can prove your broader geopolitical point, as if they're not humans, and they're all just being used by somebody else. So anyway, I have to say,
well, and they're and that these thousands and thousands of Palestinians' lives that are lost constantly, like you're saying, Ray, are treated as collateral, are not valued, are mostly not even reported on. But then we are all being demanded to condemn the Israeli lives lost in this one attack. And every life is a whole ass life. Like those are people. So it's not that I, you know, but am celebrating that, and I can't even imagine the horror, like I never can. And so it's like that kind of double standard where we are literally, Palestinian lives are being devalued and destroyed constantly, and the international community is not doing anything about it, and Israel is acting with complete impunity. And then if we want to respond at all right now, we must you know, they have to extract this condemnation of those deaths, only those deaths. And like you said, Francesca, if we want to talk about a systemic cause to this loss of life, to this violence, which is the only kind of response that might lead to preventing more, then, you know, that is accused of being like heartless.
What's going on, Frantifa? If you haven't already, subscribe to this channel right now. Hit that button. And also, you can become a patron and support the show every single week. Get access to bonus episodes and exclusive merchandise. Patreon.com/bitchuation room. Do it.